Okay, I really want to have you watch this next story. Buying a house is a big investment, and getting a home inspection is often part of the deal. But what if there is a serious problem that the average home inspector wouldn't catch? This is a story you don't want to miss, so please welcome my friend, Mike Holmes. There he is.
No girls today.
You look fine. You're looking fine. Okay, we're talking about with you oil contamination. How prevalent is this in Canada?
This is something that I don't think anyone wants to experience. You buy a house and it has a buried tank and you don't know about it, that's trouble.
Okay, so we're going to talk about this right now. We're going to take a look at the Corey story. Watch this.
911 emergency.
We've been living in Toronto for about 5 years, and we knew we wanted to find a nice house after we had our first child. He was born almost 2 years ago. And we have a little dog, and we always wanted to have a nice yard for both of them to play in and for us to play in. And we started looking, finally found this house, and loved everything about it, especially the yard.
The first winter I went through, I needed more space. We needed the basement, so we got the ball rolling on that project. And we were excited, and now it's like a nightmare.
The first part of the project was bring somebody in and start the construction and basically dig down 2 feet. And we were away at the time when they started doing that work. And we got a call from our contractor, and he said, we've got some bad news. The soil underneath the house is contaminated with oil. It was discovered that it's kind of everywhere, all throughout the basement. And so basically the project was put on hold while we figured out what to do, where to take it, how bad is it. Now, 3 months later, there's still a lot more contaminated soil sitting down there. So we're just in a holding pattern, waiting to find out what's going to happen to our dream home.
Marilyn, it's a good thing you phoned me because I think David needs my help. Here's the big issue that I see. There is no documentation to show any area that is there A, an oil tank in the ground, B, an oil tank above ground, so you just can't make a 1-800 number and say, hey, is this house, because I like this house, does it have an oil tank? Right. Unless you can visually see it. In simple English, 40 or 50 years ago, odds are there was an oil tank in your home or outside of your home, and it was an oil furnace, especially if you have radiant heat in your house. So you have rats all above your house. That starts to dictate, was there an oil tank? It would all have been over here. The tank, more than likely, under the stairs in that area, because they would have just put it underground. It's a shame that they were able to put it underground back then, to be honest with you. You got title insurance, right? Mm-hmm. Which I highly recommend to get title insurance. But what, did you phone them?
I did.
And what'd they say?
They don't cover something like this.
Why?
I don't know.
You know, they can dictate what they're going to cover and what they're not going to cover. Title insurance is more to maybe cover right-of-way on the property, any issues within the property, but not anything to do with an environmental disaster, because that could be endless buckets of money. And that's, no one wants that fault. You don't want that fault. The problem is you bought the house, and now this is your bag of crap you're holding, and it's yours. Yeah. You can't sell it because now you know. So you got to hold it, clean it, and make the best of it.
How about that? How about that? What a story. David's in the audience with us right now. I cannot imagine what you've been through. It's been very trying. What have you learned about all of this?
Never to buy a home. No. Well, you know, first time buying a house, you don't think to look at these types of things. So we just saw the house. I had an inspection. Everything looked okay, but you don't know what's underneath the house. So we're in this situation, and we're still trying to figure it out.
What's your mindset going day to day with this house?
Hoping that the next day will be better than the day before.
Yeah.
And hopefully, you know, we're going to get some good news soon, because it can't always be bad news. Sooner or later, there's going to be some good news.
Is there smell of oil?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
It's better now, but at the beginning, when they first discovered it, and when they started digging down, disrupting the soil, we couldn't even really stay in the house if the smell was so bad.
Wow, wow. Okay, how common is this, Mike Holmes?
This is unfortunately very common. There's nothing really dictated out there as to where an oil tank might be, especially if it's an in-ground oil tank. But like I said earlier, that odds are, if it's an old home, it was once heated by oil. So we need to find out, we need to do more investigative work. You did get a home inspection that was really good. The problem was the home inspector really talented enough to find the evidence? Now, we don't want to blame him because it's not his fault. I want to blame the system here. This is a really big issue that there is no documentation. Is it as simple as maybe calling up the oil tank companies and saying, hey, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, where did you used to drop oil?
Yeah, exactly.
And what was there? I think we need to have something like a home fax. We'll call it Homes Fax for this matter. I really do, because
You're on.
I got a last name works, right?
Yeah, it works. But there's no follow-up. That's just the thing. We don't think of doing it, and then if it does happen like it did with the Corys, there's no follow-up. Like, who do you call? Where do you find where that was?
Here's the supposed rule.
Okay.
If you convert to gas, natural gas, you have up to 1 year to lose that tank. Now, I'm going to say it should be whoever cut that tank and put in natural gas should be forced to remove that tank. Then we know it's been done. Then we know they have to do the testing. The reason why that's not going to happen is because if that's your house that you bought and that oil tank is in there, what if there's a hole underneath it, and what if it's contaminated the soil?
Okay, what about the people that sold them the house?
They're not liable unless somebody's done something on purpose, and that's why I recommend the title insurance, unless they literally knew and they hid it. In other words, they put in more soil down there, they tried to cover it up, but you'd have to prove that.
Yeah.
So they're not liable, like I said.
Yeah.
Now it's David's problem.
And okay, in some cases, the tank has been removed. In some cases, the tank is actually buried.
Yes.
Okay.
If the tank is removed, you want evidence that it has been removed. You want evidence that it was done by a proper company. You want evidence that they have checked for environmental problems. If the tank is still buried, a lot of people don't know that. I shot a show that the tank was buried in the backyard.
How did you discover that, though?
We saw a pipe sticking out of the ground. And we were renovating the whole house. And I said, geez, you know what? That doesn't look right. And I looked over at the wall and I saw that there was an old intake line and 1 + 1 = 2. I said, dig that hole. I dig that area. And sure enough, we found a tank.
There it was. Was it intact?
It was intact.
Boy, lucky.
But it leaked.
Oh.
It leaked at the bottom.
So you're Mike Holmes. How do we find out that we may have this issue? Like, they didn't know until they started renovating their basement.
I would say you need to bring in someone that knows what the hell they're talking about. You know, find an oil specialist. Find Stu, the one that I recommended to Dave, to call. Phone this guy. Because they know how to look for a possible oil tank in the ground. Now, most of them were above ground, but there were so many homes right now, years ago, that actually had them in the backyard buried or underneath the house, buried in the basement, which is just ludicrous that they did it, but you were allowed to back then.
Yeah. Okay, so then bottom line is, who is responsible?
You are.
I am.
You are. You bought the house. It's your problem. Believe that? Is that wrong or what?
That's so wrong.
That is wrong.
So have people gone after people legally to find out?
I wouldn't suggest it because it's going to cost you way too much money in legal fees to fight. The only thing you can do is find out whether or not the homeowner, like phone them, get your lawyer to call and find out, did they know that oil tank was buried in that property? There is really, nobody wants the fault of this. That's the truth. Nobody wants to go, hey, this is my problem. I'll pay for that. Don't worry, David, right? No one's going to claim that. And insurance companies are going to try and find a way, and I'm sorry, that's who they are. They're going to try and find a way around it that they don't have to cover your problem. Title insurance is, again, the smartest thing you can do before buying a house, but it may not cover such an environmental disaster.
So the status right now is what? Where are you now?
Well, we just got some test results back. Lots of testing, and we're waiting on the most recent test results. The oil tank, from what we understand, is nowhere to be found. We don't know if it happened 5 years ago or 55 years ago. We're just kind of in still a holding pattern.
Wow. So you're saying to people, before we take a break and continue with the story, if you're living in a house that's how many years old?
If it's an old home and it has radiant heat, if it has radiant heat, odds are there was an oil tank on that property.
Okay, we're going to talk about the cleanup maybe after this break. Unbelievable.
What do you do if your land is contaminated with oil?
If you don't know enough and you find out afterwards, you're caught in a trap.
Mike Holmes offers solutions to every homeowner's nightmare in his special Maryland Consumer Alert. That's coming right up.